Get that fucking trash out of your life. You have legacies to build. We grew that business from 3.4 million to 17.1. Horsepower, not horse shit. You want to be the parent that's an ally. They don't need another fucking friend. Not everybody's cup of whiskey. Toughest advice for the toughest businessmen. Be relentless. I'm starting a email millions Mastermind. You can get the details at emailmillions.coach. It's a simple 12-month mastermind for small business owners, entrepreneurs like you. And I'm going to teach you what I've done in every one of my companies, which is how to build an email list from nothing, how to send a simple plain text email every single week that will flood your business with quality leads, with referrals, and cash flow. The three things that we need to have peace of mind in business. I used to stay awake, lying in bed at 3 o'clock in the morning, not sleeping, worrying about making payroll the next day. I used to stare at the ceiling, worrying about how I was going to pay my taxes or how I was going to pay my dad the $30,000 I had to pay per month to buy my insurance agency. That all vanished when I started building a simple email list from zero. I started emailing it once per week, and all of a sudden I started to have some cash flow. I started to have some referrals. I started to have some qualified leads, and it got better week after week. Week after week, it got better. So I'm going to write these emails for you. You're going to have 52 emails to send over 52 weeks. It's really affordable. I'm going to do one training per month, and that's it. So you need to have 90 minutes per month. You need to have an hour and a half per month for the training, and you need to have about 10 minutes per week to personalize the email that I'll be writing. That's it. 10 minutes to make $500 a day minimum heading into the next 12 months. Go to emailmillions.coach and see if it's your cup of whiskey. If it's not, that's okay. If it is, well, that's great news. Emailmillions.coach. My mom is 89 years old, and she was here visiting with my father last month. And it reminded me, we had some conversations. My mom is the most mentally tough person that I know in this world. My toughness, my mental toughness, doesn't come from my father. It actually comes from my mother. And anybody who actually really, really knows me understands that. Good morning. They understand that I am a lot more like my mom than I am like my dad. You hear more about my dad because we worked for 17 years shoulder to shoulder in the insurance business. But my mom, we used to call, when we were children, we called my mom the Iron Lady behind her back, in reference to Margaret Thatcher, the great Margaret Thatcher. So it was a compliment, but also we said it behind her back, and it was reference to her incredible grit, her incredible toughness. And if you call somebody the Iron Lady, it's pretty self-explanatory. My mom never called my dad to come home, raising 3 children in 15 years. My mom is the CEO of our family. She ran the day-to-day. She raised 3 children. She raised my sister and myself in the back of the general store for the first 5 years of my life. Just a super intelligent, super compassionate, and super tough human being. And the blessing, the gift that my mom gave me above all others is she taught me to, number one, believe in myself, and she taught me to never suffer fools. She taught me to never suffer fools. My mom's toughness is insane. Like she does not suffer fools. And if a person is a person who's not honest, not authentic, boy oh boy, or cuts corners, then my mom's, she has the swift sword and always has. They will not last very long in her life. She taught me to never suffer fools. One of the things that I was reminded of when my mom and dad were here last month was my mom always talked to us, my younger brother and my older sister and myself, and she always said, Michael, she said, everybody wants to be interesting in this world. She said, you want to be interesting, I want to be interesting. Everybody wants to be interesting. We want to be popular, we want to be well-liked, we want people to respect us, we want people to appreciate us, we want people to love us. That's hardwired into every human being. We want to be respected. We want that to be part of our life. She said, and we want to go to a party, we want to go to a barbecue, we want to go to high school, we want to go to college, we want to start a new job. Whenever we're meeting people, we try so hard to be interesting. We try so hard to be interesting. She said, son, try to be, instead of just interesting, she said, son, try to be interested. She said, you'll separate yourself from 99.9% of the people on this earth instead of being focused on youth, trying to be an interesting person. She said, you are an interesting person. You're my son. She said, focus. She said, when you're meeting people, you're coaching people, you're hiring people, you're having lunch with people, you're talking to people on the phone, she said, be interested. You don't need to be interesting, be interested. And she used to say that to me all the time. And as a young teenager, I was like, well, no, I want to be popular. I want to be well-liked. I want to be, the big man on campus. And my mom just kept pounding this into our heads. Instead of being interesting, be interested. And what she meant by that when we asked her, she said, curiosity. She said, he said, most people, the curiosity in them dies. As if it's not gone when they graduate from high school, curiosity is gone when they're out of college. They stop reading books, they stop growing, they stop contributing, they stop learning. And their curiosity shrinks to nothing. How many people do you know that are genuinely curious? They're curious about where you came from. They're curious about how your parents met. They're curious about what country you originally came from. They're curious about your business. They're curious about your marketing. They're curious about the books you read. They're curious about your morning routine. They're curious about your failures and your victories. How many truly curious people do you know? That's one of the things that the school system pounds the hell out of our children, is curiosity. They say when they ask a curiosity question in a room full of kindergarten children, age 4 and 5, and there's 30 of them, 30 hands go up, curious about everything. By grade 3, half the hands go up. And by grade 5, 1 or 2 of the hands go up. The children have been shamed into not being curious. Conformity instead of curiosity. Follow the crowd conformity instead of curiosity. So to keep our curiosity alive, to be interested in things and other people, is a weapon in influence. It is a massive, badass weapon in influence. When I sit down and I write an email, my most successful emails are when I'm interested. When I ask a question in my email. Two of my most popular emails, well-received emails in the last 20 years are a couple of emails that I did over the last month where I asked you, tell me the greatest lesson your father taught you. And the second email was, tell me the number one lesson your mother taught you. And I was genuinely, authentically curious. I sat down and I literally printed off hundreds and hundreds of replies and letters that I got from men like you. When I get these replies, they go to Leanne and Marc-Andre, but they send them to me and I print them off and I study your response. I sit by the pool and I read over 100 replies to the father question. I read over 100 letters from the mom question, and I appreciate every single one of these replies. But I was interested. I'm interested in your story. I'm interested in the number one thing your mom taught you. I'm interested in the number one principle that your dad taught you. And it's authentic interest. Like, I learned so much from reading those 250 replies. I learned so much by being interested. And it just shows you that my mom is right. Instead of being interesting and trying to put on a mask and trying to be somebody we're not, instead be interested. I've been really focusing on this the last year, when occasionally we'll have new friends. When we're here in Naples, we'll have new friends that we play pickleball with. We'll have friends that come over to swim at our house. They have young children. My daughter's friends. We have children in common, and people will come over sometimes for a cookout or a barbecue or a swim or play pickleball. Maybe even go to the beach for the afternoon. So we're meeting a lot of new people because we're in a new place. We're in a new home, in a new community, in a new country, in a new state. So I've really focused on the last year and a half on being interested, genuinely interested. I'm always curious about other people and I'm always interested in your story. But now I'm being more self-aware of it when I'm meeting new people. So instead of me, we had some friends over the other day at the pool. Krista made some hamburgers and we played a little bit of pickleball, and then the kids played in the pool. And these are people that we've known maybe for 2 months. But it was amazing in a Sunday afternoon social setting where I was able to, instead of me trying, to talk about myself, or me, focusing on me, or me trying to impress them, or me trying to be this interesting person, I just dropped all of that. And all I did for the 4 hours was show interest in them. And it was fascinating how much I learned about these people, how much rapport I created with these people by me listening and learning and being curious about other people. They're high quality people. I'm interested in their story. But years ago, I would have sat there and talked about my company. I would have talked about my hockey team. I would have talked about my different companies. And a lot of it would have been Michael McLean. Well, I wouldn't have learned anything because I already know my own story. So I'm focusing on being more curious. I'm focusing on building rapport through asking people high-level questions because I'm authentically and genuinely interested in these amazing stories. I don't hang out with chumps. I don't hang out with tomato cans. These are high-level people that I can learn from, that I can model, that there's a story in there I can learn from and tell. So, you know, there's a big difference between sitting down at a table and sitting there and talking about the news or politics or something you've done, or being badass curious and asking a person, you know, where you were born, tell me about your parents, where were your grandparents from, where did they immigrate to Canada or the United States? Tell me about your first business. Tell me how you got into this business. We hang out with a lot of entrepreneurs, you know, learning about their children, how they parent, just these amazing stories. And one of the things that keeps coming up this year as I'm more curious and I'm more interested in people is I'm learning that everybody has something that they're struggling with in their own life. I don't care what mask they wear, and everybody wears a mask. Every single person that I talk to that I'm curious about and I question and I ask them about their story and their life and their children and everything, they all have gone through tough times. And there's not one person that I've consulted with, there's not one person I've hired, there's not one hockey player that I've coached, there's not one personal friend that I know that isn't always going through something all the time. It's this too shall pass for everybody. There's something difficult happening in every single person's life, no exceptions. And like the great David Goggins says, if you think some of your friends and some of your coaches and some of your mentors and some of your employees don't have problems or don't have problems now, they're just better at hiding them than you are. They're just better than hiding them than you are. That's why anti-social media is so toxic, because it's so fucking fake. It's fake book. It's Instagram. It's everybody's fake mask. You don't learn anything when you shoot a selfie. You don't learn anything about a person when you take a selfie. You don't learn anything about a person when you post your vacation. You don't learn anything about a person when you read about what they had for lunch. You don't learn anything about a person when they repost a tweet from ESPN. That's the whole thing. It's so shallow. It's a toxic, emasculating echo chamber of fakeness. You know how you learn about people, you know how you discover great things? By spending time with people connected without technology, without cell phones, and you ask people about their childhood. You ask them about growing up in this case, we were talking to our friends, he grew up in Cuba under Castro, and how much he loves and appreciates America, how they moved from Canada to the States like we did, how they're both entrepreneurs in this incredible country called America, how they believe in raising their children, accountability, chores, doing hard things. We shared ideas about, the Einstein blueprint and Emery's math coaching and chess and exercise. And you learn these things by being interested, not by just shooting off your mouth and talking about yourself or talking about things that do not matter. The news does not matter. The weather does not matter. Instead of good morning, instead of spending and wasting time on such things, talking about pop culture or politics or the weather or things like this, start being interested in other people. I'm a very introverted guy. Like, I like to spend time alone. I like to spend time thinking and reading and studying. I'm not comfortable in social settings. I'm more of a person I'm very comfortable in my own skin, and my happy place is the end of the dock with a great book. That said, it's important for me when I'm in social settings, when I'm sending an email, when I'm writing my newsletter, when I'm socializing with people, when I'm playing pickleball, it's important for me to be curious. It's really important to be curious. And actually, it's helped me so much. It's helped me so much in terms of being more relaxed and more at ease and more mindful in social settings. Because as an introvert, I'm more comfortable speaking in front of 10,000 people than I am talking to 10 people. I'm more comfortable speaking in front of 5,000 people or doing a mastermind training or shooting a video for you to 2,000 people than I am, in my own backyard talking to 5 people. So being curious and being interested in other people is my secret weapon. And this goes back to the mindset of, is your mind closed? Because for most men that I work with, 99%, their mind is slammed shut. They haven't had an open mind since they were a young person. In other words, they live with that, well, my business is different mentality. That's the life they have. Well, Michael, that sounds great. That for the insurance business, but my business is different. My marriage is different. My children are different. My state is different. My country is different. My situation is different. That's a closed mind. If you hear yourself saying things like that, well, you have a closed mind. And you need to crack open your mind by being curious. You need to crack open your mind by being interested in people and other subjects. And it's amazing what curiosity does for keeping us young. The more curious you are, the younger you're going to be. My mom has been fighting dementia for the last 6 years, and she has fought it like the badass that she is, like the iron lady that she is. But my mom, part of how she's been able to fight this toxic disease is that she's genuinely curious and interested in people. She's always, if you ever have the pleasure of meeting my mom, she's just one question about you after another. And Krista's mom, who passed away 4 years ago, Gerda Hardy, was an incredible person, an incredible teacher. She was a phys ed teacher. She taught gym and phys ed for 35 years. And at her funeral, you just saw the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that were influenced by being coached and taught by Mrs. Hardy. And one thing really struck me, and it's the one thing that I really, really appreciated above all her incredible qualities, is she had this incredible interest in people. Admittedly, I don't have it at that level. I mean, she would, every time Gerda would come over to our home, she would ask me questions about my company. She'd ask me questions about what I'm writing about. She'd ask me questions about the hockey team. She'd ask me questions about, what are we doing, boating, or we're playing some tennis. And it made you feel important. She had this incredible gift of making you feel important, of making you feel like you actually mattered. And my mom has this gift. Krista's mom had it in spades. And I think it's something that we're in control of by being curious, by being interested in other people, by asking genuine, authentic questions. And then what do you end up doing? You end up building rapport. How do you build rapport? You build rapport by listening. You build rapport by listening. I've been a recruiter for 20 years in the hockey business. I've been in the recruiting business. In other words, I've been recruiting blue chip hockey prospects for 15 years out of my 20 years of coaching. And I read books on the great Bobby Bowden at Florida State, and I've read books. Good morning. I've read books about how Nick Saban is such a master recruiter. I've read books about Mike Krzyzewski recruiting players to Duke. I read books about Lou Holtz, and Bobby Knight recruiting players to Duke. and to their programs. And all these books came back to the same thing. When a Saban or a Bowden or a Bobby Knight or whoever it is walked into that living room to recruit that recruit with grandma's there, mom and dad are there, sometimes the dad's there, the family's there, the decision makers are there. These guys are amazing listeners. They're amazing listeners. Like Nick Saban can close a room like nobody else, but Saban's an introvert. He knows the questions to ask. He knows who the decision maker is in the room. He knows what to say. He knows what not to say. And when players, they make a decision to commit to Alabama, or they make a decision to commit to Duke back in the day, or they made a decision to commit to play for Coach Knight, it was always the same thing that triggered them. I just felt that Coach Knight or Coach Saban had my best interest in mind. I was going to go there a boy, and he was going to make me into a man. And that's what the parents and grandparents would say too. I feel confident, having my son at the University of Duke University. I have confidence sending my son to Bobby Bowden. I have confidence that he'll come back a principled and compassionate man, not just a football player, not just a basketball player. So really, really, really interesting stuff where you're just like, wow, that it just makes, good morning. It's just those guys are incredible listeners, and they're genuinely interested. I'm sure, like when Bobby Bowden, the king of the living room, would go into a home, I can guarantee he asked grandma questions, he asked grandpa questions, he asked mom questions, and he got those people. He built rapport by questioning them and being genuinely curious and interested about them. Tell me about your family. How did you come here? Where did you immigrate from? What were your struggles? What were your wins? What were your losses? Why are you interested in your son or grandson coming to play for me? Just being interested. So my mom got this right, and I've used it in all my marketing authentically. Like, anything that I write about, that I ask questions and show genuine interest about my brothers, are my most successful pieces. People love to talk about themselves. They love to talk about themselves. I do, and you do. So it's really interesting. I was watching a presentation one time with Coach Saban at his summer camp in Alabama a few years back. And he's talking to this young group, probably 200 kids. And it's Nick's football camp, right? So you have one of the greatest coaches in football, period, up there speaking to this group of young people. And what does Saban use the opportunity to talk about? Doesn't talk about championships, doesn't talk about football specifically, doesn't talk about fitness, doesn't talk about any of that stuff. What Saban talks about first and foremost is listening. He tells the children, he says, he asks them, he says, how many ears do you have? And you got 200 kids. Well, 2. And then he says, how many mouths do you have? And 1. And everybody responds 1. And he said, okay, so he goes, that means that the good Lord meant for us to listen twice as much as we are talking. And good morning. And then he goes on and he rips these kids, which they had it coming, and he says, most of you aren't even listening right now. I'm 2 or 3 minutes into my speech, and most of you are somewhere else mentally. So it was really interesting when Saban, like, the first thing he talked to these children about was listening twice as much as you talk. And everything you see on social media is just talk, talk, talk. Videos, talk, talk, talk. Marketing, talk, talk, talk. But the greatest influencers, the greatest coaches, the greatest mentors, the greatest leaders are incredible listeners. They're so interested in other people. And the great Jim Rome had a saying that Tony Robbins borrowed, and I love it. 99.9% of people listen to reply. They listen to reply. I see this all the time. I'll be talking or working with a client, and I'll be giving them my opinion on marketing, on their marketing piece. And you can just tell they're sitting there on the edge of their seat, and they're not listening to what I'm saying. They're waiting for their opportunity to reply. They're waiting for their opportunity to talk and defend what they're doing. In other words, they're more interested in defending what they're doing or what's not working than cracking open their mind and talking about new ideas. Good morning. And you see this all the time. I had a guy in one of my masterminds, and we do these hot seats where a person presents their life and their business for about 45 minutes, and then all of us work on there. It's called a hot seat. And it's one of the most powerful things you can ever do in business is be part of a mastermind that does hot seats. So we do these hot seats. And we had this one gentleman on there, and he did a tremendous job and the whole thing. And he talked about his personal life, his professional life, his wins, his losses, what he needed help with. So then we come to the very last part of his hot seat, and he has 3 questions that he wants the group to help him with. He wants our tribe to help him with. That's what a hot seat's about. Share and then ask a few questions what you need help with. Well, you know what? Everybody helped. Everybody jumped in, and they gave him solutions to these 3 questions that he had. Great ideas, great back and forth, right? But here's the thing. Every time another person spoke and was trying to give a solution, this gentleman is like, yeah, but my business is different. Yeah, but my life is different. Yeah, but my marriage is different. Yeah, but my clients are different. Yeah, but my finances, are different. So he had a closed mind to progress and improvement. He wasn't curious. He wasn't interested. He was listening to reply. He was like everybody else. He was more interested in being interesting or appearing to be an interesting person. Look at all the success I'm having. Like everybody, look at me, pound your chest. Versus being interested in what other people are saying and offering. But here's the thing, and why this guy is such a badass king, is he watched the replay of his hot seat. And we were talking a week later, and he said to me, he goes, Michael, I'm in shock. I didn't realize it. He goes, but I don't know how to shut my fucking mouth. And I was like, really? How so? And he was like, I was watching the replay of my hot seat, and he says, I have these 15 tremendous entrepreneurs giving me advice, helping me, making suggestions, and all I wanted to do was interrupt. All I wanted to do was tell them why it wouldn't work in my world. He goes, I have a closed mind when it comes to marketing. He says, I have an open mind clearly to other things, but I have a closed mind. So there's the power of watching a recording of your hot seat. By the way, you can apply for my mastermind at badassworldbuilders.com. It's iron sharpens iron. That's all I'm going to say. Best investment a person could ever make. Badassworldbuilders.com. He says, he goes, all I did was listen to reply. I wasn't really listening. So the great Jim Rome also said, instead of just listening to reply, he said the polar opposite of that, which about, what is it, 0.5% of people, he said, listen to understand. Listen to understand. Good morning again. He said that makes all the difference. And people know whether you're listening to respond or listening to understand. So my friend in the mastermind, since then, it's amazing what progress he's made in terms of his marketing and in his business, because his mind is now cracked open. And why is it cracked open? It's because he's no longer focused on being interesting, putting on a facade or a face or putting on a show to protect himself. And now he's interested. He's curious about marketing. He's curious about direct mail. He's curious about offline, online promotion, advertising. He's now listening to understand. He's now reading to understand. He's now asking his fellow brothers, good morning, open-ended questions, and he's genuinely curious and he's genuinely interested. So my mom, the great Eva McLean, she said it best, and she continues to say it today. Instead of being interesting, be interested. Curiosity builds rapport. Curiosity builds rapport, and it also feeds your mind. It motivates you, it inspires you. Other people's wins and losses are tremendously, tremendously inspiring. Everybody is going through some form of challenge. Some people have suffered through incredible, incredible stories of personal trauma and come out the other side. But you'll only know these stories if you ask questions and you're an interested person. Try that at the next time you go to something social, whether you're golfing or whether you're at a barbecue or whether you're meeting new people or you have a meeting with some new prospects or you want to close an account. Imagine just sitting there and probing and asking questions of somebody who's thinking about buying your services or product. All of a sudden you have this incredible rapport with this person. Don't be surprised if you close the sale. My sales scripts, when my guys were selling on the phone in insurance, it was insane. There was literally 12 rapid fire questions to start. So they weren't telling us about their situation. We were like probing. Tell me about this. Tell me about your children. Tell me about what driving age are they. Tell me about this. Tell me about that. And good morning. And just incredible stuff because they're interested. My guys were genuinely interested in these people. And that's how you end up having not a 15% closing ratio, but a 70% closing ratio by being interested. Not interesting. By being interested, not interesting. So, as I said at the beginning, I'm launching a Email Millions Mastermind this May. You need to go to emailmillions.coach to reserve your seat at the table. 100 entrepreneurs, businessmen, coaches only. When those seats are full, we will begin in May. What the hell is this going to do for me, Michael? It's going to take you through the coming meltdown of our possible economy. Could be months, could be years, but winter is here and winter is going to get worse. We're going to have a thinning of the herd like nothing you've seen in the last 50 years. I call it Depression 2.0. My dad has seen it all. He was born in the Depression. My mom was born in the Depression in 1933. Both of my parents were born. And they tell me firsthand about being a child in the Depression. They tell me about bread lines and soup lines. And they also tell me about how both of their families, their fathers, did better than most during the Depression because of the relationship they had with their customers. And my dad mentioned this, his dad ran a general store during the Depression. And I said, how did your dad do better than everybody else during the Depression? He said one thing. He said, my dad had this incredible relationship with all of his customers because the post office, good morning, the post office was in his store. People had to come there in the community and they'd get their mail at the counter. So he would see his customers, whether they wanted to buy something or not. He would see his customers 5 days a week. And he said the relationship his father had in the late 20s and early 30s and through the 30s was different than most business owners. So he was the last guy that got cut when the Depression happened. In other words, people needed bread, they needed cheese, they needed butter, they needed milk, and they would buy it from my grandfather. And I was just like, really? He goes, yeah. He says, not a recession, Michael. He goes, a depression. He said, that's what's eventually coming here. He said, the charity ball is over, son. 50 years of unprecedented wealth, abundance, opportunity, and sloth, and laziness, and printing money. And he said, what you're seeing today with double-digit inflation, what you're seeing with the markets, he said, this is just the tip of the iceberg. He said, I was born in the Depression. Your mother was born in the Depression. He said, you have no idea what's coming. And he said to me, he said, my dad had a relationship with his customers. So my dad mentioned when he was here, he said, you know those guys you coach? He says, make sure that they're building what you did in the insurance business, which is building an email list from zero people, okay? Building that up and sending a weekly email, minimum. I like daily, but you can do weekly, no videos required, just a plain text email. He said, make sure you teach those men your system so that they can have qualified leads, referrals, and cash flow in their business no matter what happens over the next year, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. Plus, you'll have a nice asset to sell down the road when you walk away into the sunset on your own terms. So he said, I remember you did that in the insurance business to save your own butt. He says, make sure you teach that to your people. He said, it's inexpensive. Email isn't going anywhere. It's probably more valuable today than it was 10 years ago. He said, look what you do with your list. He said, you email it every day. He said, you built the barber shop with an email list. He said, you built McLean Insurance with an email list and physical mail. He said, you built your hockey team into the number one ranked in attendance 7 years straight with an email list. He said, it's affordable. Anybody can do it. But any of those guys that are struggling with cash flow, any of those guys that are struggling with referrals, with not enough quality leads, my dad said, you got to teach them your email system. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to do it with this little mini mastermind. It's one training a month. So you have to have 90 minutes a month, 90 minutes per month. I'm going to write 4 emails a week that I'll post that you can instantly use in your business. You don't have to write the emails. I will write them. All you have to do is personalize them, which will take 5 to 10 minutes. I'll tell you the software I use. I'll tell you, I'll train you on how to get them delivered, how to stay out of the promotion folder, how to stay out of the spam box. I'll tell you what to do with unsubscribes. I'll tell you the whole kit and caboodle, the whole everything, the nuts and bolts of all of it. And it'll be over 1 year. It's monthly. I was going to charge $1,000 a month, and I thought $500 a month. That's 1 or 2 sales every week. And then I said, I want this to be available to more men, part of my Million Men mission. I said, I'm going to charge Instead of $500 a month, I'm going to do it for $147 a month, $147 a month for civilians and outsiders, guys that aren't part of my newsletter tribe and aren't part of my mastermind. It's only $147 a month. You can cancel at any time. It's monthly. Or for special rate for my brothers, my mastermind brothers and my newsletter brothers, $97 a month. That's pocket change. You spend that on coffee, you spend that on donuts, you spend that on whatever. So what's the ROI on this? On building an email list and mailing it once a week? Well, you're gonna have to put in 10 to 15 minutes to make $500 a week, a day. You're gonna make more than that, but I'm not a hype guy. I mean, the first email I sent it went to 75 people or 45 people or something, and we ended up making a couple grand. You may make $50 the first one, but every week it gets better and better and better. Emailmillions.coach. Emailmillions.coach. And we'll start in mid-May. Like I said, I'll write 52 emails for you this year. Merry Christmas, Happy Easter, Happy Thanksgiving, Super Bowl emails, sports emails, pop culture emails, fun emails, giveaway emails, and you can use them as you want. You can literally use them as you want. But you need to be able to invest 90 minutes a month in one training per month, where I'll teach you all the tricks of the trade. And you also need to personalize these small little emails. You can do it in 5 minutes. Press send once a week. And then you'll have to be able to deal with the leads, the referrals, and the consequent cash flow that'll come from a handful of sales each and every time you press send. It's literally how I sat at the kitchen table in my underwear, in my boxer shorts, and made $500 a day. Every day. I would sit at the kitchen table in my boxer shorts and make $500 a day in the insurance business. And then it became $10,000, then it became $2,000, then it became $5,000, then it got up to $50,000. I started with this many emails. I ended up 17 years later, 63,000 emails at my agency, and I sold that list for $500,000 in addition to the sale of the business. They bought the email list for $500,000. Whoever buys your company down the road will buy your email list as well. So it is, like Matt Fury said, it is the honey that brings in the money. It is the eighth wonder of the world, and email is going nowhere. It is better and more powerful than ever. And any business I'm in, the first thing I do besides writing a book is I build an email list. I have thousands and thousands and thousands of emails now with this company, my coaching business. I started with like 30 or 40 2 years ago, and now this video I shoot every day. So emailmillions.com or .coach, not com, emailmillions.coach. That's it for today. I'm heading to Dunkin' Donuts to see my girls and get my coffee and get ready for my Champions Mastermind. It is a big day. God is good. God is great. And look at that sunrise. I've been blessed with one more day. He's not done with me yet. He's not done with me yet. I still get an opportunity to teach email, how to make millions by email, electronic mail. There's the words, electronic mail. So that's it for today. Emailmillions.com. Sign up right now because it'll be sold out quickly. 100 men max. That's it. 2 words that changed my life. 2 words that'll change your life. Be relentless.